The last case on Dawood Ibrahim has been registered, to my knowledge, nearly in '93, which is more than 20 years back. And Chota Rajan has been pretty much inactive. Abu Salam is in jail, Arun Gauli is in politics, and various other gangsters or dons, as we call them, either they are killed or they are in jail or whatever. So for all practical purposes, as we're in 2013, it seems as the underworld doesn't exist anymore. At least not in the same level as how one saw it in the late 90s and early 2004. In fact, pretty much in 2005, the encounter squad itself was disabled because the government felt there was no need to have such a squad, because pretty much, like I said, the menace of the underworld is beginning to wane and is almost over as we are in 2013. But why the underworld is caused in the first place, whenever it started, of course it has come over a period of time, the disparity between rich and poor and the unhappiness of the system, which always calls for a rebellious parallel organization in any society, which is what also would be the cause for an underworld for such a long time to flourish in the city. Those conditions pretty much are there, so there is no logical reason for why the underworld should not be there. One reason it's not there is because the earlier guys, when they came in, they never really had a plan. They just kept on doing something. And what they did, erupted in something else, and they reacted to the situation, they responded, and so on. And at a point of time, when the police got better of them, they withered away in the course of time. But now the fact that the conditions still exist, and which caused the underworld, I'm saying, and the fact that they've become worse, I think it's just a matter of time that somebody realizes out there that there's a vacuum, and that whenever there's a vacuum in a lucrative business, and underworld is, which is pretty much everybody's knowledge, there'll always be an entrepreneur to come and fill in the gap. Now I use the word entrepreneur in a way because when Dhirubhai Ambani comes in and he has a certain way of looking at the corporate business or whatever it is, from the way the Tatas and Birlas, who were the big guns at that time, did, and he had a completely unique vision which no one expected, and that changed the entire scenario and the entire horizon of whatever the corporate business structure is about. Now similarly, a Karim Lala, a Haji Mastan, kind of the big old time guys were there at a certain time, and it took a Dawood Ibrahim to look at it new. And in fact, a common man on the road actually have come to know Dawood Ibrahim of the underworld only because of Dawood Ibrahim. Now I know Mr. Ambani, he represents a value of systems of constructiveness in society, whereas probably a Dawood Ibrahim might represent the opposite in the same structure. So it's not fair for me to compare the two, on any call. But the only thing one can't take away that there was a common point of a vision. I'm trying to say that because when I made company, why did I call it a company? Because pretty much there's a structure, there's a structural organization, and in the hierarchy, the employees and the CEOs or whatever, they might not be called. And like I said, a line, if someone goes out of line and a company is fired from a job, and in an underworld company you're literally fired upon. That's about the only difference I could see when I studied that whole structure. But all this still, we are talking about 2000, so in the early 80s when this whole thing started, of the entrepreneurs like Mr. Ambani or Dawood, whatever I'm talking about. And here, to repeat myself, talking about 2030, yes, the underworld is not there like the way I said it was. Now for me, the idea of Satya too came. One is, Satya as a film was about a guy who came in 1998, and he just got into the underworld and got shaped by the existing circumstances in the underworld the way it was. Now Satya too is about a guy who comes in 2030. Now to an extent I would say it's a futuristic film, not like in science fiction, but futuristic, what I mean is he can come tomorrow, he can come day after, he can come after 1 year, maybe. But what if a guy who thinks like this comes, a new gangster who comes in the future, would be armed with the mistakes of the old time gangsters, the mistakes they did, why their companies kind of vanished and went out of business, or why those people are either landed up in jail or whatever happened to them. So you probably study that, you'll be educated. And today, I mean, the policing methods, how they use what methods to capture them, is aware of it. So he's also well versed in that. And the third is probably he, because of technological improvements and the way the business structure constantly changes because of the new policies of the government, he's looking for new revenue models of what he can do with the present day setup. And yes, he'll also be aware that you don't need guns and shooters. I mean, that's passe, that's outdated. You need to have much more, I mean, intelligent way to look at things. Like when I spoke to a certain senior crime branch officer about my idea of Satya and I told him about the protagonist and the way he thinks, he told me that he said, I would like you to address the crime branch people just as an exercise to see if they're prepared to, prepared for eventuality of a man coming like this. Now, that's a huge compliment for me, I thought, because of the way I designed this character. Now, how did I design this character? This character is nothing but actually the 25 years of my study of the criminal psychology. You know, I mean, someone said if I am not a director, if I didn't become a director, I would have become a good gangster, which actually is untrue. Because see, the point is, a naturalist studies a snake, and probably a naturalist knows the concentration of the poison and what it contains, and probably how it acts on enzymes in the human body and what causes death due to snake poison, and he knows how the fangs operate of the snake. But that doesn't mean he can become the snake, or he is the snake, or he wants to be the snake. My study is of my interest to look at what a man thinks, or any kind of a dark side of the human mind thinks. That's where I come from. But the fact that as a director, if I'm envisioning a certain scenario, if a man like this comes, so far we know the big daddies of the underworld, and the protagonist of Satya 2's thinking starts where the other Don's thinking ended. That's the whole point of the film. So I thought it's in every which way correct to at least to give a scenario from my imagination. A man who thinks like that also can come, and what can you do about that? That's for me the fundamental aspect of why I wanted to do this film. Now, coming to the fundamental basics of any kind of what is a gangster film, or what is it? It's a rebel organization. It's a, if a society says, okay, go this way, that way, and what is crime at the end of the day? Crime is nothing but you want to go against what is acceptable in society. You're breaking the law. But at the end of the day, you also have to understand crime it's a legal word. The act, the criminal act, always will have a reason for where it comes from, where it will have a motive, it will have a certain issue, it will have a certain situation which it arises out of. So there will be X number of factors which would, probably result in an act of crime. So just to call it a crime and trying to put him out, I don't think is a solution, and that is the reason I think crime persists all the time. So, and always when I was accused of romanticizing crime or gangsters, I always argued this aspect that it's impossible that you can call Satya romanticizing crime. Every man who took the gun in that film had died a miserable death, including the protagonist. But just to call them as bad people and not to show the grey side and not to show the human side of it, I think is being highly irresponsible, because you're just trying to wish away by calling them bad people but not understanding the core of where it originates from. So I would like to believe I've done that partly in Satya and Company, but I think Satya 2 for me is probably my ultimate understanding of the so-called criminal psychology. And now also, as far as the police is concerned, I've always believed, and I asked this officer, how prepared do you think you are if an eventuality of a man coming like this? And he said, we'll be completely we won't be knowing, at least to start with. And the reason for that, I always believe that the police should always be lesser than a criminal. I know it sounds ridiculous to hear, But my logic is that the police is an evolved system, whereas a new kind of a criminal is a visionary. So until he does something which is unexpected, the police cannot understand, and then they can learn from that and understand how he's done it, and then probably contain and prevent it in the future. And that is the reason security systems across the world, including something as advanced as America, would fail miserably when a new kind of a thought in crime comes in. So, as sum up, in the finale, I would say Satya too has a protagonist, the way he thinks and the way he plans a crime and the way what motivates him to do a crime is unlike anything anyone I've seen before. And that I'm saying with a conviction because I believe I know about the criminal psychology at least probably more than anyone else because of my long study of it over the last 2 decades.